Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. I'm Bryce Matheson, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Lender. Lender is a loan management software tool designed to help you with every aspect of your business, from origination to servicing to payoff. Lender helps you with document generation, helps you with collecting monthly payments, dispersing monthly payments to your investors, taking in new loan applications, giving your borrowers a portal that they can log into, giving your investors a portal that they can log into. Pretty much every aspect of everything that you do inside of your lending business can be done and facilitated through Lender. You can check that out by going to joinlender.com. That's LENDR, joinlender.com. Now, on to the episode. This week's episode, we are talking about the power of hard money lending. And I think most people already realize that, which is why they're in the business in the first place, but I still want to reemphasize. So this week, we had just a bunch of different closings that all kind of pulled together and closed within this 1 week. And we made $52,000 just in points alone. And that was really fun. Usually it's all spread out over a couple different weeks or, different months as one deal, comes in and it starts to straggle and you request documents and it takes a little bit to get everything and it'll close in the, the month following or whatever. But everything just went according to plan. We had a bunch of different stuff come in all at once, and it was really great. It was really, really great. So why am I talking about this? Well, for me, there were a couple things. The biggest thing is I have a close friend, and he is finishing up a flip project that he's been working on for a couple months now. And, well, first off, the flip is just stunning. Absolutely. So he bought it for $920,000, put $370,000 into it, and list price this week, I believe, is $1.7 million. So if you do some quick math, he should net around $300,000 to $350,000, assuming everything goes according to plan. And what's funny is I used to drool over those numbers. I used to look at all of the before and after pictures, and I was like, whoa, that is just absolutely stunning. And it is, right? It's incredible what people can do. But now I don't get jealous. And that's because I know all of the work that has gone into it. If you're newer to the podcast and you kind of haven't heard our original story, we used to flip houses. And while we didn't have this gigantic operation, we did a good number. We did anywhere from 12 to 20 per year. And so over the course of 5-ish years, we did around 100 different projects. And you get really good at it, right? You use the same materials, you use the same contractors, you have all of these systems and everything in place. But things still go wrong, and it's still a lot of work. I go back and I think of my very first flip, and it was night and day different than my 100th flip. And we learned so much. Of course you would, right? And we do things completely differently on that last one than we did on the first one, but it's all just a learning game. That being said, even with all of the systems and all of the processes and all of everything that goes into it, there's so much work. And every single flip, there's something that goes wrong. You find a foundation issue, or you can't move this wall like you thought you could, or, like they're settling here, or wow, the electrical is just a freaking nightmare and you have to rewire the entire house. Like there's always something that creeps up. And so I no longer look at other people's flips and drool over the numbers because I know the amount of work and the amount of effort that has gone into that. Now, this particular flip that I just mentioned that my friend is doing, I do have to admit I drooled a little bit because we are now based out of Arizona, and just the cost of living and the prices of homes here are so much higher than where we used to flip. The average home here is probably in that $600,000 to $800,000 range. We were buying homes anywhere in the $150,000 to $300,000 range before, and we were renovating those. So just because of that, just because of the nature of the higher cost, you're going to get larger spreads and larger margins, hence, a $300,000 profit. That being said, it was such a fun contrast to me to look at all of the money that he will potentially make in the future, maybe, and I believe he will, but it will be 60, 90, 120 days from now when it goes through all of the showings and all of the closings and title and escrow and everything, and it finally settles and he finally gets that check. It's just an incredibly long process from start to finish to get paid. And say, for example, we were to just continue to do hard money, we probably would make about the same as if we were to do this massive flip, and with way less stress and way less headache. A lot of people see this beautiful check at the end, But you don't realize that when you spread that across 8, 9, 10 months, it's not as impressive. I'm not saying it's not impressive. It's not as impressive when you're only making $30,000 to $35,000 a month as opposed to a fat lump sum of $300,000. I hope I'm not coming off as like braggadocious or whatever it is. Is that even a word? I don't think so. That's not a word, but you get my point. I'm not saying that $300,000 is something to scoff at, not even slightly. But what I'm saying is you reach a point in your life where you're like, I don't know if this is really worth all of the effort that goes into it anymore. I would rather just have like a little bit more of a relaxed life, and I'm not running 2 hardware stores and managing job sites and contract. It becomes a lot. So anyway, that was our own personal story, and I'll kind of reiterate quickly. But basically what happened is we flipped homes for a lot of years. And then what happened was around COVID timeframe, we had a project that went south, and it went really south. We lost around $50,000. And when we finally, all said and done, it was just the project from hell, and it took about 14 or so months to really wrap it up. When we finally closed on that property, I looked at the settlement statement, and even though we lost $50,000, our private lender made $25,000. And I thought to myself, hang on a second, that's not cool. That's not fair. I had months and months of sleepless nights and all of just like this worry and stress. And he probably slept like a baby. He didn't even know what was going on with the project. It was just like, cool, sounds good. Thanks for my money. Let's do the next one together. You know what I mean? And so that was really when we started to pivot into the private lending. And it has become an incredible revenue source for us, but B, peace of mind. It has been so great. So more or less, that was kind of the gist of this week's episode, is just mainly that it was a fun contrast for me to have a friend who was finishing up this flip, but also we had a killer week closing all of these deals. And I was like, you know what? I think I would rather take this side over here as a private lender instead of being a flipper, just because you could still make a ton of money, but I didn't even have to leave my home office. I just did everything from here, and it's a great way to, actually, it's a killer way to make a living. Now, let's talk about kind of the mechanics of these different deals really quickly. So this was, if I'm doing my math right, I believe it was $1.85 million in loans that we closed this past week. So we had 3 $300,000 loans for a total of $900,000, and then we had a $850,000. That's right. No, so it's 1.75. Yeah, 1.75 million in total loan volume. So 3 $300,000 loans, and then 1 $850,000 loan. And the $850,000 loan, obviously, it's a bigger loan. It's in a higher cost of living area up in North Idaho, and it's right on Priest Lake. And so there are a bunch of beautiful cabins right there on the water. This one's going to be part of a purchase and then some renovations as well. But all of those together, $1.75 million. And I think that's probably the best month that we've had, maybe ever. I believe it probably is. Probably the best month we've ever had. Anyway, all that to say, 2 of the $300,000 loans were for somebody he was a local contractor, and he was just a little bit over leveraged, and he needed to consolidate some of his debts. So he went and paid for all of these projects cash, and he just ran out of funds. He, didn't realize that he over leveraged himself, and he didn't have enough to actually do the construction on the projects, because he just kind of went crazy and bought a whole bunch of land, which is good. He got really good deals on this land, but then he didn't have enough money to go and do the construction on some projects. So we leveraged some of his land, and it's a great project. Both of them are right in the heart of town. We're probably about a 45% LTV, which makes me very comfortable in the event that something were to happen. And then the nice thing is he will go and improve some of these projects, and then our spread will be even higher. The ARV and the discrepancy between what he owes versus what the project is worth is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and wider as he progresses on the project. So the last one, the $300,000, was a project in Boise, and that is a barn dominium, which is really cool. It's for a nonprofit, which is interesting to me because I had to learn a little bit about recourse versus non-recourse loans and how to secure everything when you're not using personal guarantees and stuff like that. So maybe that's an episode for another week, but it was still really, really cool. So we had that project, and this was neat too because it was a barn dominium, but it was for a nonprofit who was teaching basically underskilled laborers a trade, carpentry or HVAC or whatever. So they have this whole crew of licensed contractors that will come in and teach you how to do the work, but you get this hands-on experience. And so they go around the state of Idaho and they build these barn dominiums, giving these kids the ability to, build skills. So anyway, we funded all 3 of those. And for whatever reason, that was my realization this week. It was just like, okay, I am in the right space. This is where I really want to be. And it's just the peace of mind, the phase of life that I'm in right now. I don't know that I want to run around to job sites and all these different things and grab materials and be managing jobs. And then everything, you have a contractor steals from you and then you get these materials are on back order or there's a slew of things that go wrong. And when you're flipping, the longer a project takes, the less money you make. And when you're a lender, the longer the project takes, the more money you make, which again, we're not loan sharks. That's not the goal, but I greatly prefer being on this side of the fence. So, okay. Quinn and I just got back from the American Lending Conference. So next week's episode is going to be all about kind of our takeaways and everything that we learned there, just because that will be our first private lending conference. So we just want to go over insights and things that we learned and things we'll probably do for the next one. Stick around and stay tuned for that one. Thanks for listening.